Hey TikTok, welcome back. So for today's video, we're doing something that is honestly so exciting. I'm not sure how I'm going to be able to contain myself throughout this entire video. Like, I don't necessarily expect you guys to feel as strongly as I do. I hope that you will find it interesting and enjoyable, but this might be the video that I am most excited to have ever made. Like, I'm so hyped today, so we're gonna try to pull it together because today we're doing a ranking of Barbie's Dolls of the World Princess Edition collection, which if you have been here for a while, you might know I am absolutely obsessed with. It has been a year, or at least a year. It's probably actually been longer, like a couple years since I first discovered this lineup, just like randomly out shopping in a toy store. I like found some of these dolls and then went down the rabbit hole. And to say I'm obsessed is a bit of an understatement. I have so many dolls from this line. Also, in case you aren't familiar with them, I'll like pop up a few pictures on screen. You're going to be familiar with them by the end of this video, rest assured. But I just love them so much. They're so beautiful. They're cultural dolls, but they're also like princess dolls. So intersection of some interests right there for me. And I just feel so deeply about them. I can't fully explain it. Like, it's just a vibes thing, just a thing where I have just connected with these dolls really, really intensely. Like, to the point where, without question, amongst all the doll brands ever, they're in my top 10 in terms of like my favorite lines that have ever been released. Like, that's how much I love these dolls. So it's probably not surprising that I would want to do a ranking video for them. However, there's a caveat, and this is why this video is so exciting to finally get to make. Am I going to get emotional? Oops. But I said this when I did my ranking of just the generic Barbie princesses, that I didn't include the Dolls of the World princesses in that video because they are cultural dolls. They're not just, oh, here's a fantasy princess, like that might pull from like something or another, like some culture or another, but like these are supposed to be representative of the different cultures. And so I felt like it would be really inappropriate for me to just be like, oh, this cultural doll is really pretty and this cultural doll is really ugly, because like that's not really fair. You know what I'm saying? Like, to me, it just kind of felt like an inherently inappropriate thing to be like, ah, yes, this doll that's inspired by Italian culture is less pretty than this doll inspired by Mexican culture. I'm not a part of either of those cultures. So it just didn't feel appropriate to do a ranking of these dolls the normal way that I do rankings. And this is like the funny part, because with that knowledge in my head, I have thought before, oh, I could do like some sort of enormous collab where I reach out and find people from these cultures and like rank them that way. And I was like, no, that's insane. That's too far. We're just not going to do that. But on my generic Barbie princess ranking video, one of you guys suggested the same thing. And I think I responded and was like, yeah, that'd be super cool, but it's like a lot of work. I don't know. Like, I just was really unsure about it because it is such an undertaking to go through. But the fact that it had been in my head and then one of you guys was also like, hey, you could do it this way, I just couldn't get that thought out of my mind. And so that's what I've done over the past like couple of months at this point. I have sought out people who are from the different cultures that these dolls are supposed to be representative of, and I have asked them for their opinions. So all of these dolls on this list, none of them were actually ranked by me. Like, it's a ranking just because I think that's a fun way to format this. But all of these dolls are ranked based on your responses, based on responses of people who are in the cultures, in the communities. And I'm just so excited. Like, this has been such a fun project, such a massive undertaking, but like such a wonderful one, and one that I feel so strongly and so good about. So that is what we're doing today. It feels weird that I don't need to give my typical disclaimer that these are just my opinions, because they're not. So instead, I'll give the disclaimer that these opinions just belong to the individuals who gave them. Please don't attack anyone for their opinions. Like, you're obviously allowed to disagree, but like, please don't be rude to anybody. Hi, Miss Weiss. Are you excited for this one too? So with all of these, some of the people that I contacted did ask to remain anonymous. So obviously I will be respecting their wishes, and I'll just like mention that something that I'm reading is anonymous, or I'll mention that someone gave an anonymous ranking. Some people did want to be credited, which I'm absolutely happy to do. So I will have the usernames of everyone who wanted to be credited in the corner as I'm talking about these dolls, just so like I don't accidentally mispronounce anything or anything like that. But that way you'll know who gave this opinion, who to give credit to for that. I am going to be reading out everyone's opinions who gave me permission to read them out, which is going to make this video a little bit long-winded. And also, it's obviously not going to be in like my typical ranking format because I'm not doing the rankings. But I just feel like it's really important. Like, this is a slightly more serious topic. Like, it's still very fun, like somewhat whimsical, but it is like a little bit more serious. And so I wanted everyone's voices to be heard. So like, There is going to be a lot of reading in this one, a lot of words and all of that jazz. Hopefully that won't bother y'all. Personally, I found it very interesting to hear everyone's opinions and like the analysis of these different dolls. So like I think it's cool. But yeah, if you're not like into a lot of words, this might not be the one for you. But if you are, if you're also as excited as I am about this one, about this whole video concept and everything, now it's time to jump on into it. Starting off with a pretty unfortunate editing note here. I'm like pretty gutted about this, to be honest. But on screen, you are seeing the Princess of the Incas from this line, who is not featured in the video. That's not intentional. I would never cut a doll out intentionally. Like, I'm not trying to be like, no, we're not doing this one. I just, like, straight up didn't realize that she needed to be included until this second right now for, like, collecting the information for this and, like, tracking all of the dolls and everything. I was using the Barbiepedia page for this series, and that page is missing the Princess of the French Courts, who is included in this video because I remembered that that page was missing that doll, but it is also missing the Princess of the Incas, and unfortunately I did not remember about her in time to ask anyone for their opinions on her. And I'm like, I'm so mad at myself and so frustrated because I literally have this doll, but she's been in storage for a couple of months now because of everything going on with the doll room. So yeah, I'm deeply sorry. Was not my intention, but unfortunately she's not going to be a part of the video. So I just wanted to explain that and give her her moment to shine. And now we can get into everything that was done properly. So first up, we have the Princess of Ancient Greece. This is a doll that I do have, that I do personally really, really like, but obviously I wanted to hear some other opinions. So this is the message that I received regarding the design for the Princess of Ancient Greece. Quote, so the thing that immediately jumps out to me is that her clothing might be a bit more structured, for lack of a better term, than what might have been realistic. Ancient Greek chitons tend to be more loose and flowing compared to the form-fitting dress that the doll appears to be wearing, although that is to be expected from a literal doll. Quick side note, if I mispronounce anything, I hope y'all know it's not intentional. I just I don't know how to pronounce every single word, especially because some of these words are not like native to me, so it's not necessarily something that my tongue is used to doing, if that makes sense. So I do apologize if I mispronounce anything. Anyway, continuing on. Quote, I don't know whether to comment on the color of her clothes, since there absolutely were more earth tone garments, but we know that brighter and deeper colors were preferred. The white flowing piece is probably an Imatian. I definitely messed that one up. I'm so sorry. A thinner piece of fabric that was worn in various ways on top of the chiton, basically a multi-purpose layering piece. And the fact that it has gold thread border around it is very much accurate for the majority of white fabrics in Greek antiquity. The gold brooches on the shoulders are accurate and a very nice touch, as is the rest of the jewelry. The wraparound snake-like bracelet and the large hoop earrings are very common grave goods in ancient Greek burial sites. The hair is fairly accurate, if a bit exaggerated. It was very common to have the hair be kept in braided and raised styles, but it was not usually this high, and it might have been partially covered with a veil, though the diadem shown here is supported by archaeological evidence as well. The bone white skin is accurate for the makeup conventions of the time, which was basically just spreading lead on the skin to become paler. Sounds crazy. I can't tell if her cheeks have any color on them, but ancient Greek women did use to make a sort of blush using hematite powder and red flower petals. The eye makeup is a bit anachronistic, but I can't judge them too much for taking artistic liberties. So a very detailed analysis, which I super appreciate. Again, I know this video is going to be quite wordy, but as someone who loves to learn and especially loves learning about other cultures, I'm kind of here for it. Point being, this person who had written that did rank her as being good, and then someone else who wanted to remain anonymous, didn't have anything they wanted me to read out, ranked her as being near perfect. So averaging those out, she's sandwiched right in between good and near perfect. And then we come to the Princess of Ancient Mexico, and this one is the one that I think I got the most responses for, possibly rivaled by the Princess of England, which we're obviously going to get to. So this is going to be a lot to read through. Again, I don't want to apologize because I don't feel bad for it, but I did just want to kind of give you guys a heads up that this one is going to take a little bit longer. They're not all going to take this long, but it is what it is. I think it's worth it because I love hearing people's opinions and hearing just information that I didn't have before. So this first person says, I would say it's good. Personally, the colors aren't bright enough, and it's tough to label it as ancient Mexico considering both the Aztecs and Mayans lived in Mexico. If they wanted to have a more accurate representation, they should have named her the Princess of Ancient Central Mexico. This design is lending itself more to the Aztecs. I can appreciate, however, that she's not stereotypical in the big floral dress designs that you tend to see in Mexican dolls, even if they're not Day of the Dead themed. I'd also argue that her skin tone is very light. If she is meant to be portrayed as Mexico-Indian, she should be very tan due to sun exposure regardless regardless of social class. Mexicans did not become classified as Caucasians until the Spanish arrived and conquered them. So obviously the picture is going to be on the screen, so you guys will be able to see what this person was referencing in terms of the skin tone. That was a very common complaint with this doll. I'm not at all trying to excuse it. I do have this one, and I will say that in person she is ever so slightly tanner, but I definitely think that it's like a fair critique to say that this doll is quite pale compared to what might have actually been accurate. So that's just like a slight little side note there, I guess. But that first person said that they would rank her in good. Next one said that they would rank her in okay, and this is what they had to say. Personally, I think she is an okay doll. She represents a lot of the ancient Mexican culture in its design. The execution is alright, but I do feel the color palette has been slightly Barbie-fied. Usually these designs are in more earthy tones, and while it is completely acceptable to also represent them in bright colors as well, this doesn't feel quite right. It has to be noted that the design is by no means offensive. It just doesn't completely click with me as feeling my ancient culture fully represented with this doll. The gold part of the headdress looks beautifully crafted, but she should have had a complete fan of feathers instead of only having 7 with spaces in between. So, you know, still lots of learning. Not quite as glowing a review, I guess you might say. So yeah, as I said, they ranked her in okay. Next up, the next response I got was, I would say she's near perfect. I love the colors. The traditional Aztec clothing and headdress look very stunning and high quality. My only complaint is that she doesn't look like an indigenous person at all. Aztecs had big noses, very tan skin, and more square facial features, facial markings, and big ear expansions. I really don't like the ambiguity with the name, given that she's clearly inspired by Aztec culture. That's also something that you're going to see throughout the course of this video, is that some of these are like very unclear or quite vague as to what culture they're supposed to be representing, which I think is a very fair thing to complain about, especially because you're also going to see some that are so specific that it's like, what is up with this not being consistent? So I definitely understand the complaint there, but as I said, that person said near perfect for her, as I think I said. I don't know. I've said it now. This next one's short and sweet. This person said, I honestly feel like she is an outstanding representation of the Aztec culture, although her skin color should have been a bit more tan. And that person said that they would rank her between nearly perfect and good. Then we have, I would say she's near perfect. The outfit is pretty accurate. I'm not sure about the doll itself. I would have liked her to be a bit more tan unless it's just the photo. That person also ranked her as near perfect. And as I said, it is like a little bit the lighting in the photo, but it's definitely not just the photo. You know what I'm saying? You are so cute. Yeah, I knew it. My lens cap just got attacked by her. That's okay. She's worth it. This last response is quite long, but very detailed, very interesting, and I do very much appreciate it. There are some words that I definitely can't pronounce, and I was given permission explicitly by the person who sent this in that I don't have to try to say them out loud. So first of all, thank you for understanding that I am not good at using my mouth. So I will just be like flashing those words across the screen when it's applicable, because I really don't intend to like butcher any of these words. So here we go. Initial thought upon seeing her was, oh, she's so pale. That was a choice to make. I'm not saying there aren't pale or light-skinned Mexican people. My partner is. But considering she is meant to represent ancient Mexico, I find it a little disturbing how pale she is. My rebuttal to any argument of her being a princess and not having dark skin doesn't hold up from a historical or anthropological standpoint. From codex paintings to religious propaganda, such as La Virgen de Guadalupe. I'm so sorry if I said that wrong. That was not one of the words I got approved. Sorry, let's just keep going. From codex paintings to religious propaganda, dark skin was the norm and considered beautiful and healthy. I checked out other photos and the likelihood that the brightness was tuned up in the example picture, but in other lighting she doesn't appear to have much of a tan. But moving on from some casual whitewashing, let's start head to toe on this doll. Her face reminds me a lot of Mexican silver screen actresses. It appears to be reused from the Barbie festivals of the world Cinco de Mayo doll, but I'm not good at telling them apart too well, and I could be wrong. Red lips are actually historically accurate. Women from this region, I'm just going to say instead of trying to pronounce the word, would paint not only their lips red, but their teeth as well, which, side note, that is like so sick. I would have loved if they had given this doll an open mouth sculpt and like they had done the accuracy of painting the red teeth. That would have been so fun. Going off the main dress, I determined the people were the main inspiration. That being said, the feathers are another interesting choice. The neon pink and blue follow through in the rest of her outfit, but traditionally the feathers used would be either fluffy white ones, striped brown ones, or the feathers from the male quetzal or cotinga birds. I think the latter two would have been nice replacements with some small pink feathers to remind us that this is a Barbie. As well as being a nod to the headdress of Moctezuma II, the headdress itself isn't quite the right shape, but I can forgive that since the scale is so small. It looks like there's turquoise and another another red gem adorning it, which is fine, but obsidian and jade would have been more appropriate. Jewelry I will also forgive due to the scale, but remembering the price my mom paid for these collector Barbies, they could have at least given collectors painted details. Gold is fine and historically well used, but plugs, piercing, and beads made straight from precious gemstones would have also been appropriate, which again, I just have to point out, like, I hate that that can't be a thing because in America, especially, like, I'm sure it was more so at the time that these dolls were coming out, that's like, oh God, like, you shouldn't get like facial piercings or like stretch your ears or anything. Like, I just think it's a little bit sad that the culture that these dolls were being produced under ended up being more important than like representing the culture that was actually being presented in the doll. I hope that makes sense. Sorry, I just find this really, really interesting. To continue on, I looked at some close-ups and pics of her without the headdress, and she doesn't even have stud earrings like Playline Barbies most of the time. I'm not sure if her little fan is meant to be an extension of the jewelry or another ornament entirely, but I remember seeing this item a lot in dance circles. It would have been made of similar headdress feathers. During dances, it was used to waft the sage smoke or as an alternative to holding a rattle or stage weapon. Okay, on to the main event. If I am correct with the historical inspiration, the pointed shawl she wears is a insert here, usually ceremonial. The geometric print is quite nice, and as stated above, mirrors the blue and pink feathers on her headdress. It looks well constructed and soft. The dress itself is the right silhouette for the time period, while still being a fashionable shape for a Barbie. I like that the designers didn't fully repeat the pattern from above, instead added onto it with shapes and patterns we still see today. Finally, I can't quite tell if she's wearing sandals or not. Not sure if those are gold sandals or ankle bracelets and foot jewelry. Either one is appropriate, to be honest. All in all, she's a nice doll, but I don't think she appropriately depicts the people she is meant to. So this person ended up saying that they would rank this doll as good, specifically good, but not for them, which funnily enough, I think this is why. That is a category that I used to use a lot in like my very early ranking videos, but since we don't have that here today, just generally good. So kind of averaging all of those responses out, the Princess of Ancient Mexico ends up ranking good overall. Next up is the Princess of Cambodia, and I don't have too much to say about her just because the person who responded did wish to remain anonymous, which of course is completely fine. I get that not everyone wants to have their thoughts and feelings out on the internet, so we will just have to suffice and say that an anonymous person said that they would rank this doll as near perfect. Then we are looking at the Princess of China, and I only have one response here. So this person said, in terms of colors, I think it's really cool that they didn't go with the standard red like with most Chinese dolls and went with a fuchsia. Like, for real, I swear every doll representative of China has a red dress. I think it stems from the idea that red represents luck, but I swear not all traditional dress is red. We have other colors too. But the fuchsia is really pretty color for her, and I love it. Her face, hair, and headpiece are stunning, but what is really letting her down is the overall shape of the garment. I think if it had a belt or was fitted a lot better, then it would be a nicer ensemble. I would love to see the traditional robes in ancient Chinese royalty because they are so stunning and elegant. I think with this doll, they tried to make her outfit a combination of a cheongsam, and the robes and the fusion just look like she's wearing a sack. So that's a little rough, but I obviously can't understand the critique there. So as I said, the final ranking for her with like just the one response is going to be just okay. On to the Princess of England. This one I also did have a few responses for, so get yourself sad. So the first response I get said, I personally think they did an excellent job of creating a princess that not only represents English historical fashion, very clearly the Tudor era of the 1500s, but has very Barbie elements with the color choices on the gown and styling. I own this doll in person, and she is a favorite of mine when it comes to the princess collection. The back of the box even featured an illustration of Mary Tudor. Why did I say it like that? Anyway, further showing the research and care put into her design. I would personally rank her as near perfect, with the only inaccuracies being her crown. This would have been a hood and veil in this era, and the bright shade of pink used. As a Barbie princess specifically though, she's perfect for me. So overall, we went with near perfect, just like, you know, kind of taking out that Barbie aspect just because not everyone accounted for that. So yeah, near perfect as her first ranking. This next person said they definitely went with a Tudor princess slash queen style here with the gable hood like Catherine of Aragon would have worn. Not super detailed from a historical perspective, but really pretty, and the colors harmonize nicely. The face screening is modern rather than historical, so she has a bit of an iPhone face, but overall I'd still rate her as near perfect. So we have another near perfect. I do think the iPhone face comment is like really funny because it is, I can kind of see where they're coming from with that one. Next up, this person said she is just okay. She is clearly based on Tudor times, but England has a lot of history of royals, so this does not really represent us as a country, more as a time in history. Plus, I don't think pink would have been a common color then. Not sure because I'm not a historian. I know it's pink for Barbie, but yeah, overall it does not scream Princess of England to me. So this person ended up saying that they would rank her as just okay. Obviously, like not quite as excited about her. And honestly, like that's part of, I think, the fun thing about these dolls that I got multiple responses for is just seeing how even different people from the same culture can view these dolls so differently. I find it very fascinating, and I'm really happy to be able to showcase all of these different opinions. But we are still going. This one is rather long, but it's very detailed, so let's just jump on in. This person said, I would probably class her somewhere between bad and just okay. Seems kind of harsh, I know, but she's not really great as a cultural or historical doll. As a base doll devoid of any context, she is of course cute, but if she is supposedly meant to represent 1500s English fashion, she really is bare bones and hardly manages it. England is a mild country with a lot of rain and a fair bit of cold, until global warming, lol, so historically velvets and other hard-wearing, heavy fabrics were used for warmth and durability. Her sleeves being velvet is actually probably the best part. Bye. But she's missing the layers she would have had otherwise, as Tudor clothing and almost all historically English clothing has a heavy number of layers for warmth and structure. Her skirt being one flat blob is a really big letdown. There would have been at minimum a series of trims on it, but very likely it should have been 2 or layers of overskirt. The layers could have been achieved via an illusion, printed fabric, or fabric sections if budget was a concern. It wouldn't have to actually be 6 layers of bulky fabric, but it should definitely look like it. The Disney character Merida is a solid-ish example of how to do a simplified dress of the era, as they still make an effort to show all of the internal stuffing, bursting out the seams. As it is, I think that anybody looking at this doll would recognize that she was a princess, but they wouldn't actually recognize she was specifically to do with England. She reads extremely generic, that sort of nondescript Western European image that lots of non-European media does. As an aside, making her blonde doesn't really read as English at all to me. Blonde is more associated with Northern European, and the most common hair color in England historically was brunette, unless we go before the Isle was invaded and before England was formed, but that's very much well before the 1500s. I don't know if blonde is the default for this particular Barbie line, but it really doesn't do it for me. She ought to be ginger or brunette in my opinion. This part is getting much more subjective though. So yes, a little bit more scathing, but like very in-depth and very interesting to read, so that would rank her between bad and just okay. This person said she was near perfect, by contrast, and said that her design is unique. In fact, she reminds me of Aurora. Also, I love the headpiece and the hair color and makeup they gave her. Then we had another near perfect who said, I think her dress is very accurate to Tudor era queen consorts, which is pretty to me. Makeup and headpiece is also so cute. I'd give her a near perfect just because the skirt print could be a bit nicer. The skirt print. And then 2 more to get through here. Both of them pretty positive reviews, I guess you could say. So this first one said, I'm not actually verified in history, but I will say the fashion is very 1470s, which is what women from the upper class would be wearing at the time. So I'd say it's a wonderful execution of that time period. And they said that they would rank it as perfect. And then the last one said that they would rank it as near perfect and wrote, I've actually never seen her before. Generally, she's beautiful, seems to lend a lot from Tudor fashion, primarily the headdress, neckline, and sleeves. Unsure about color palette and fabrics used, but overall a gorgeous doll. I do think it's really funny that like a lot of people pointed out the color palette and like her being kind of Barbie pink, just very interesting to me. So averaging those all out, she ends up ranking between good and near perfect. For the Princess of the French Court, I did get a few responses, which was great. This first person said they would rank her in near perfect and said, I would rank her in near perfect because not only is she really pretty, I think she fits really well the medieval era of France, but I would have loved for her to have those pointy hats that they could have been wearing at the time. I don't know the exact term, but I hope you see what I'm talking about. I know what they're talking about, like almost like a cone hat. I feel like that sounds so bad, but like, it was fashionable at that time period, right? I think the color choice is great too, because purples and deep blues were extremely difficult to get at that time, making it a sign of nobility and money, as only those with a lot of money could get those colors. And that's my opinion on this beauty. Very much appreciated. The next person wanted to remain anonymous, but they also said they would rank her in near perfect and said, I would say she's almost perfect. She's really pretty. The colors are unusual for a French dress. Purple is the color of kings, but maybe not princesses. Now, it's a cool take because most French dresses representation tend to be Rococo like Marie Antoinette. So I appreciate the medieval dress, it's a little different. The hairstyle is inaccurate, but I guess it wouldn't look this great otherwise. Also, the tiara is cool. So it's funny that we had one right after the other being like, oh, nice with the purple, and then another being like, that's not really, again, I love seeing different opinions. It's so good. And then lastly, another near perfect who said, I really love her as a doll. I think I would rank her as near perfect design-wise. For me, she is losing a few points because I don't see her as fully accurate to what she wants to represent, but she is still beautiful and very interesting. The use of purple is very smart since purple is a very regal color, and I think it makes sense. She is losing some points for accuracy because some elements of the embroidery seem a little bit out of place and look like they might be more appropriate for other cultures, even though embroidery was a thing. I'm just talking about the kind of embroidery and embellishments. She would also benefit from other makeup choices if they wanted to go for accuracy. I'm not an expert in that time period though. It's definitely a doll I enjoy. The quality seems good, I like the layers and color combo, and I think the golden flowy hair are nice accents to break the heaviness of the deep purple velvet. So funny that we have like so many different responses, or 3 different responses, all different thoughts, but all of them said near perfect. So I didn't have to do a whole lot of work averaging all of that out. She just goes straight into near perfect. The next doll that we're going to take a look at is the Princess of Holland. And remember earlier how I said some were quite vague and some were quite specific? This to me is one of the more specific ones because at least current day, like I know historically speaking, borders moved and there's all kinds of stuff there. But at least current day, Holland is part of the Netherlands. Like there are, I believe, 2, there's North Holland and then South Holland that are different provinces in the Netherlands. I'm pretty sure I'm correct on that information. If I'm wrong, absolutely feel free to correct me in the comments. I'm not an expert. But yeah, so this one I did reach out and ask to just see if I could find anyone who was Dutch generally, just because it is like a little bit harder to find someone specifically from one of those 2 provinces. But I did get some responses that were from those provinces. So that was like super duper. But yeah, I just did want to say, in case like anyone had seen me posting or anything, I did ask for a slightly broader definition just because I was like hoping to be able to get more responses that way. So take for that what you will, I suppose. So this first person said, I would rank her as near perfect. I think the colors are very Holland since our signature color that everyone wears on King's Day is orange, which you can kind of see in the dress and of course her hair color. I love that. As an orange lover, I'm always happy to hear that orange is being appreciated. So yeah, that was a near perfect ranking. Next up, we have one who did wish to remain anonymous, which again, totally chill, but they did say I could read out their thoughts. So this is what they wrote for me. They said, for fantasy, this would be a good replica of Dutch royal clothes. For me, I don't know a lot about traditional Dutch clothes despite living here, but to me, it looks accurate to the quote, older quote, times of the Netherlands. The hair is also well done and beautifully accurate as well as the accessories. I'd say this is a good / near perfect. So anonymous ranking between good and the near perfect. And then the last ranking for the Princess of Holland was not anonymous, credit down below, and they had this to say. I would say for the budget, these were not super high-end collectors, so I won't judge the cheaper fabric. This one was perfect. If you look at paintings by Rembrandt, the style of her dress and hair are very fitting. Curly perms, partial updo, but still showing the curls. She has the right amount of jewelry to indicate that she was at least a wealthier person than others, and the white collar is a very typical Holland fashion from that time. Same for the V-shaped corset and the puffy sleeves. Red and gold were typical royal colors too, and especially so in Holland, seen separately from other parts of the Netherlands, as our shield logo was red on gold. That is so fascinating. I did not know that like Holland specifically was the red and gold. So I do think it's really, really cool that that's the color palette they ended up going with. But yeah, averaging those all out, her final ranking is near perfect. Then we are taking a look at the Princess of Imperial Russia. So another one that is specific since it does like at least somewhat qualify a time period that they are looking at. And I have 2 responses for you guys. This first person said, her headpiece is honestly not that bad. Could be a little bit slimmer, but still good. Her dress should be different. And her hair could be better in my opinion. It was on the right track, but not good. It should be way longer because women in my culture used to have longer hair than that. The braid should end at her knees in my opinion. So pretty good, but like not necessarily super duper. They ended up ranking her in good. This next response is another one that is a little bit longer, but very, very thorough. Definitely has some words that I'm not sure if I'm saying correctly, so I apologize again in advance. But this person said, I had this Barbie Around the World sticker book as a kid, and there was a Russian Barbie in it, but it wasn't this one. I think she was more based on the traditional / folk dress, but it was similar. Braid, kokoshnik, sarafen, so sorry, all red. So it's curious to me that they decided to go for Princess of the Imperial Russia. I am guessing princess is an approximate translation of Tsarevna, which is the term for the daughter of the Tsar, which is the monarch or king equivalent. I'm not a historical fashion expert, so take this with a grain of salt, but when I think Russian Empire, this dress doesn't seem to be quite right. Russian Empire was a time of very westernized fashion for the monarchy and a move away from the image one might have when they think Russian. When I looked for the more blinged out versions of what's recognizably a Russian dress, with the silhouette especially, I think this would be more similar to boyar dress, which predates the Russian Empire, but I don't want to speak too authoritatively on that. Basically, to me, this doesn't necessarily read as Imperial Russia, so if they wanted something for that time, this would have been better as a peasant girl, or if they wanted this to look for a royal / monarch / noble, it would predate Imperial Russia. That's just my feeling. Choices I really like and that work is the long braid, long hair, and the hair color that's sort of between blonde and brown. In Russian, it has a name Rusi or Rusaya. Again, I'm sorry, and is one of the most common hair colors, so it works well. I don't know if that was even a thought for them, but it's not like blonde blonde to me, so I like it. Face is pretty, very Barbie. Love the red lip and the focus on red. In Russia, the word for red is krasny. I definitely fucked that up. I'm really sorry. And the word for beautiful as krasivi, which is the same root word. And back in the day, the same word was used for both, so it's a good choice. I don't love the dress itself. Something about the top being separate from the skirt is odd to me. I like the pattern. It's more accurate than if it was something more geometric. Overall, I'd rank it higher just as Russian Barbie because it's very recognizably one, and I do think she's pretty and like most of the choices except for the separateness of the dress. I'd rank lower if it was specifically meant to be Princess of the Russian Empire because this is a pre-imperial style to me, as someone who's neither a history nor fashion history expert. So they ended up ranking this between good and near perfect. And like outside of me being unable to pronounce things, I feel like that's such a good, like in-depth description. Learning that red and beautiful have the same root word is so cool, and I definitely think it makes it extra awesome that they did make this Barbie have more of like a red tone for it. And I also just think it's funny because, again, this is one of the more specific ones. Like, the Princess of England was just the Princess of England, not the Princess of the Tudor era. But, like, she was, you know, generally recognizable as Tudor. Whereas this one is literally called the Princess of Imperial Russia. And at least according to this person, it's not very accurate. So I just find that very interesting. But yes, with those combined, she gets a final ranking of good. For the Princess of India, I had two responses. One person wanted to remain completely anonymous, so no blurb or anything to read, but they did rank her as perfect. And then the second person had a lot to say. Super excited to get to read all of this for you. So, Indian culture is so vast and encompasses a multitude of subcultures, regions, and religions. Looking at the doll, I would say she is representative of the Hindu religion overall and the North Indian Hindi-speaking culture or populations. This is informed mainly by her dupatta or veil of her sari covering her head. This is usually done as a sign of respect during Hindu prayers or in the presence of elders/in-laws. So just looking at the elements of the doll, her forehead is adorned with a surbandi, a type of head adornment or jewel. She is wearing a sari, which is a long piece of fabric that can be draped in several different ways depending on the region/subculture. I cannot talk today. Like, I really picked the wrong day to not be able to talk. I'm so sorry. On her forehead, she has a bindi, or dot, that can be either a stick-on or kumkum, a red powder. The bindi can represent a few things: symbol of female energy, or a traditional symbol of a married woman, or a form of adornment, a representation of the third eye or spiritual awakening, or in the Hindu culture, a religious symbol used by both women and men. The sari itself here is beautiful, and the draping of her sari is very well done and accurate, particularly impressed by the pleating on the lower half. The patterning and inner blouse is simple but beautiful and accurate to Indian designs, particularly the thicker gold border at the edge lining the sari. Things I feel like could have been done to elevate the doll, particularly as a princess of India. 1. The inclusion of more gold jewelry. In Indian culture across regions, jewelry, particularly gold, is deeply respected and firmly ingrained. The gold jewelry represents prosperity, blessings, and is indicative of status. I feel particularly the inclusion of a large golden nose ring and bangles, which are staples of Indian culture, particularly amongst women, would have been good. So as a princess of India, I do feel she should be a bit more decked in jewelry, which definitely makes sense. Like, I'm sure it was like a budget issue, but like I definitely see where they're coming from with that. 2, I think the inclusion of mendi or henna designs on her arms would have been beautiful and added to her royal look. And 3, embroidered or beaded detailing on the border of the sari, definitely possible for old Barbie, is an intrinsic part of sari designs, even simpler ones. Overall, I do think this is one of the more impressive Indian Barbies made. I appreciate all the cultural elements included and do feel that she is culturally respectful and appropriate representation of Indian culture, be it as vast as it is. Final ranking for me personally is almost perfect, as I believe the inclusion of the details mentioned above would have really elevated her as a true princess of India. So lots of information, loved all of that, loved getting to hear it. Ranking those two things together, she gets an average of between nearly perfect and perfect. For the Princess of Ireland, we did have two responses. So this first one said, I think she's near perfect. The only opinion I have negatively is I wish maybe different colors were used, since Irish folklore have a lot of symbolism in the colors they associate with certain things, which is super interesting and totally fair. This next response, I did get permission to read it out, but not permission to share the name, so we're going to be respecting that. And this person said, so legitimately, remember this doll coming out when I was a kid. I personally would rate her perfect, with particular attention on the Celtic inspired designs on her dress, the centerpiece running down the middle. The designs are super reminiscent of 9th century Irish illuminated manuscript illustrations in the Book of Kells, which have similar Celtic motifs like the stylized knot patterns. Pretty sure the brooch at her neckline is meant to be similar to the Tara brooch, which is an artifact from the 8th century found in the 1800s on a beach in Ireland. Again, a lot of the same spiral designs feature on that too. Don't have a close-up of the Barbie's brooch, but I'd say it's similar, if not on design, then definitely construction and likeness. Obviously, in regard to color, we love a green queen, and the red hair and pale skin are beautiful and would be a good Celtic Irish representation in my opinion. So that was super, super fascinating to read about like the actual specific things that might have inspired elements on this Barbie, like actual artifacts and stuff. Loved getting to hear that. Her final ranking with the 2 average is between perfect and near perfect. Just one response for the Princess of Japan, and this person also wanted to remain anonymous but was fine with me reading their message out, so this is what they had to say. I get what they were going for, but they didn't quite hit the mark for me personally. Geisha typically wear red lipstick and not fully all over their lips, but painted in a particular way to accentuate their beauty. They actually tied the obi in the correct spot, unlike MGA when they did Lila Yamamoto. Also, she's missing a traditional hairstyle. They gave her a bun, it looks like. Overall, I'd say good, because the kimono is pretty and the print reminds me of the prints my grandma had from the silk pieces she got from Japan. I like that they made her face white, but I wonder if she has the geisha makeup done correctly on the back of her neck. To make it better, I'd change the hair and actually give her hair ornaments and change the makeup a bit, but otherwise she's pretty good. They did the hands white, which is an odd choice. They typically don't put makeup on their hands, but maybe for a mass-produced doll it was cheaper to do one skin tone overall compared to 2 separate. But it's Mattel, a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm sure it wouldn't have made much difference cost-wise to make those small tweaks. So they did end up ranking her as good, which means that her final ranking is good. I don't have this doll, so I can't, like, speak to how she looks in person. Unfortunately, and please do take this with, like, the biggest grain of salt, like, I'm not trying to insert myself in this video, but I do think that the paleness being similar to geisha makeup is more of a coincidence, like especially because you can see her neck and her hands are also pale. I'm guessing that the rest of her body is also pale. So I unfortunately think this might be more of a case of whitewashing than white geisha makeup, given that the rest of her body presumably is also this same color. So that might answer some questions about that. Again, I'm not 100% sure. If you have this doll, drop it down below. Let us know if like she is just the same skin tone all over. But that's just my guess. I just kind of wanted to pop that in. But yes, this person had said good, so her final ranking is good. That brings us to the Princess of South Africa, which is a nice, super vague descriptor there. And this is something that I find very strange. I guess it was like for marketing or something. I don't really know. But all of these dolls do have information about the culture on the back of their box. And if you read the back of this doll's box, it does specify that she is supposed to represent the Ndebele tribe. Sorry if I mispronounced that. So like she's both very broad, but also quite specific. I don't know, very interesting. But I did have one response for this doll. They wanted to remain anonymous, but said it was fine to read this out. So they said, I love her complexion so much. You might need a range of these though, because I think inclusivity might go a long way. There are so many variations of blackness, even within Ndebele, and if you can represent that, you might reach more people. Not sure what your thoughts are on body type as well, because the slender Barbie is more of a European concept. African women are generally more bodacious, if you know what I mean. I do think that's an interesting point to bring up. These were definitely produced like before Barbie really like went in with making different body sculpts and different size sculpts. So that might be like something that's indicative of the era, but I also don't think that it's inappropriate to critique it just because it's something that's older. So interesting note there, but they did say that they would rank her in near perfect. So being the only response, she gets to go into near perfect. And then we have the Princess of the Danish Court, one that I do have and I do love dearly. And I have one response for her. So this person said that they would rank her in just okay and added, the reason I think so is despite the fact that I thought that is so Danish when I first saw it, it doesn't look at all like something some of our former regents would wear. For the skirt, I can't judge the skirt fairly since most historical pictures are cropped either half total or half near, but from what I can tell, it's pretty accurate. For the top, most of the pictures I have seen are very low cut, almost over the shoulder. However, it does look a lot like Louise of Mecklenburg-Güstrows pink dress. It also gives off Queen Sophie Amelie vibes. For the sleeves, very inaccurate, sadly. The closest is probably Queen Louise of Hessen-Kassel. Again, I'm really sorry if I'm messing these up. And maybe Christina of Denmark, who is an icon, by the way. For her collar, way off. Not even the oldest queens wore them. For the hair, probably a gray area. It does look a bit like Queen Anna Sophia Reventlov's hair. For the crown, also a gray area. It definitely looks like something Queen Margaret would wear, although we typically see her with a diadem. And then finally, for the color, there's several dresses in pale blue, but it feels like the shade of this dress is a bit off. But it definitely fits the wardrobe of Queen Ingrid and her daughters, meaning modern queens and princesses. So yeah, all of that added up all together, just okay. Then we have the Princess of the Korean Court. I did have one anonymous response, and what they had to say was, I think she is near perfect. I would prefer her to have some ribbon on her outfit since that is very common in my culture, but overall, not a bad doll. So again, with just like the one response, that is going to be a near perfect ranking for her. Then we have the Princess of the Navajo, who sadly I could not find anyone to comment on. Like I said, have been working on this for a couple months. Like I have been asking and asking and asking, and sometimes like you just can't find someone. So moment of appreciation here for her picture. Personally, as someone who is not super like in-depth aware of this stuff, I think she's really, really pretty. But if there isn't anyone out there who is of Navajo descent, I would love for you to weigh in on her just because, like I said, I wasn't able to contact anyone to get a ranking. So she won't be included in like the overall ranking that I'm doing here. She's not gonna like be in the ranking on screen, but I obviously still want to shout her out as part of the collection. Moving on to the Princess of the Nile, which is obviously supposed to be a princess of Egypt. I would definitely say some sort of ancient Egypt based on the image alone. I did get one response, and this is what this person had to say. I actually love her very much. Her design is amazing. However, it's more modest than the female pharaohs used to wear. If you see the walls of the temples in Egypt, the drawings of the female's representation was always showing extra skin. But maybe there was certain women, maybe queens, in their outfits that used to be more modest. I don't know. I will say I think that the modesty thing was probably more of like a Barbie issue. Not to say that like no one in ancient Egypt dressed modestly. I'm just saying they would have had to go with that for this because they're trying to release it as a Barbie doll, like releasing something where it's not modest, where the fabric is like completely see-through, or maybe there's no top at all, anything like that. Barbie's not going to release something like that. So I do think that that's probably just like a marketing thing. But the Princess of the Nile Barbie is perfect for the design, essence, colors, accessories. Her makeup and hair are so accurate. Her shoes aren't correct, though. Usually the representation of these female shoes are always having those laces rounded around the calves, like the collector edition Barbie or like Cleo de Nile styles of shoes. Despite the shoes, though, this person did still say we would rank her in perfect, so she gets to go up into perfect. Then we have the Princess of the Pacific Islands, which again, quite vague there. If you read her description, though, she is meant to represent Hawaiian culture. And this is another one where I was unfortunately unable to find anyone to comment on it. So again, if you are Hawaiian, would love to hear your thoughts on this doll and her accuracy and everything like that. But for the sake of this ranking, I couldn't find anyone. So again, moment of appreciation for the doll here, but she's not going to show up in the actual ranking. Then I had two responses for the Princess of the Portuguese Empire, who does hold a very special place in my heart because she was one of the first dolls that I bought from this lineup. So like my heart was racing a little bit getting these responses because she's just a doll that I love, and like I was hoping that she would be a good representation of a princess of Portugal. So the first response I got said, "Ooh, I'm not a huge Barbie fan, but I'm a sucker for these collections. Personally, I think she's gorgeous and she definitely fits the theme. It's been a while since I studied art history, but the dress is somewhat historically accurate to Renaissance fashion. Maybe not full Portuguese inspiration because the Renaissance period wasn't fully ongoing here, but the velvet usage was 100% spot on. My only nitpick is that I wish the skirt had more detail, as Renaissance dresses were quite intricate. Just a stripe going down the front would elevate the design. But because of that, I would put her in near perfect." So we're starting off strong with a near perfect ranking. And then the second response that I got said, "I would rank her near perfect. I think she's pretty accurate to what a Portuguese princess used to look like. The red dress is a really nice choice. It is common to see Portuguese princesses wearing dresses in the shade of red in old paintings. The fabrics also feel really nice and accurate. So yeah, for me, the outfit is perfect for the theme. The only things I think she is missing to be completely perfect are, one, a more complex hairstyle, maybe adding some braids, maybe a half up, half down, but I really do like the wavy or curly hair that's very princess-like. And two, I think she needs more blush. The Portuguese princesses usually were for sure very pale, but some of them used to wear a lot of pink or red on the cheeks." So both said near perfect. We're in the clear for one of my favorites here. And that obviously brings the final ranking for the Portuguese princess to near perfect. Moving on, we have hit the Princess of the Renaissance, which, again, a very vague one because that's not even technically a place. That's a time period or like a movement even. So that was interesting. But if you actually like read the back of her box again, if you get more information, she is generally influenced by just the Renaissance overall, but specifically is influenced by Florence, so like Florence, Italy during the Renaissance. So I asked for Italian people to weigh in on this just because that felt like the best thing to do, but I did just want to disclose that this one was a little bit more vague, but also somehow a little bit more specific, being Florence specifically. She's kind of an interesting one, but I asked anyone who was Italian to weigh in, and I did get several responses here. So this first one said that they would rank her in near perfect because the depiction of the dress is accurate to that style to me. The colors chosen for the dress are not the most used in depiction of the Renaissance, and the faded brows and the long lashes are definitely out of that time period. That's fair. I do think that like out of all of these, she definitely like with the rooted lashes is like maybe giving a little bit more of that iPhone face coming from someone who's not as educated. Anyway, continuing on with what they had to say. Usually the dress didn't have any pattern stamped on it. That might be a cost-cutting issue though. The silhouette of the dress, the hair, and the jewelry are accurate and beautiful. So some good, some bad, but final ranking for her, or like not final, but the final from this person was near perfect. Next up, I had someone who wanted to remain anonymous, and they wrote, I would rank her pretty high when it comes to representation. I wouldn't say she's my cup of tea when it comes to colors, but her design is very similar to dresses I've been seeing in paintings I've been studying at school for my art lessons focusing on the Renaissance. Her design is very simplistic, but also very proportionate, which is a key characteristic of the Renaissance. So another near perfect for her. Next up, we had a friend of the channel weigh in, Enzo from the junk drawer, and he wrote, she looks velvety, which I love. Love a gold accent. I'm sure the headband is period accurate, but it's so chonky. Not a huge fan of the segmented sleeves. Love that she's a brunette. I would rate her as good, very nice, very middle of the road for me. So he said good. And then another response from a friend, which I do think is funny just because like the friend responses were all for this doll. Peachy Reviews didn't have anything that she wrote out, but she did rank this doll as good. So averaging those all together, she goes squarely between good and near perfect. And then lastly, to round out the video, we have the Princess of the Vikings. So for this one, I just asked for anyone who was of Norse descent because Viking is like more a job title than like an actual ethnicity. So this one was a little hard. And I did know going in that this one was probably not going to be quite as good just because even to my extremely untrained eye, I'm like, this is maybe a bit more on the costumey side of things, but let's see what you guys had to say. This first response said, well, my first thought is that she looks very stereotypical and not realistic. At least she's not wearing those horns that so many people think Vikings wore. But really, being a Viking was a profession. See? I hadn't even read that when I said that, but like, we're on the same page. They wouldn't have had a quote-unquote Viking princess to begin with. To me, she looks more like a Greek goddess than a Viking. So yeah, I would say bad, which I do think that is fair. Again, I kind of knew going in this one probably wasn't going to receive as glowing reviews, but let's continue on. This one is a little bit longer, but good to read through. So they said, I'm going to start with some thoughts. I think it will help me rank her. Sorry in advance if this is long. Don't apologize. I love it. I hate to start off with a negative, but helmet is absolutely atrocious. It is almost comical how non-representative it feels. It is also a way more Roman feeling than it is Viking. Headwear for Viking females was much more simplistic, and honestly, if I were to thrift find this girly, I would cut the top of the helmet off and only keep the rim of the helmet as it is much more accurate. Excluding as well the big circle and feather things, I don't know what they were thinking here. I'm decently happy about the fact they gave her blonde hair, although red would have been much preferred, as well as thicker eyebrows. I think it would have fit the culture much better, and I feel the two braids is a bit lazy on their part, since Nordics, and specifically female Vikings, used hair for protection against the cold, and as a way to show richness, they would display jewelry in their hair. Volume and curls are very heavy in this culture, so I would have wanted to see that. Makeup is decent, I guess. I feel like they went too heavy with the eye makeup, and she could have used more blush. Oof, I don't even know where to start with the clothes. It just feels wrong. The North is known for its cold, and especially back then I was told stories of harsh and long winters, so having her wear that is just inappropriate, I feel. Even if they would have just added a winter cloak on top of what she's wearing, it would have already been so much better. The chainmail skirt, I think that's what they were going for at least, feels desperate and cheap and would have never been made from gold. Silver is much more referenced in Viking history. I would have loved to have seen more fur in her outfit, and she just feels so empty. When you look at some of the other Barbie princesses of the world, she feels cheap and lackluster, while some princesses of the world Barbies actually feel grand and beautiful, although I can't say if they are portraying their culture correctly. I can appreciate the sculpting of the armor corset. I would have loved to have seen some ruins in there though, and the tiny dagger is as inaccurate as can be. So after all that, I really think my ranking is so much lower because I wanted it to be, because I do love seeing the North in media. They just did not do the proper research or allow much budget into her. So their final ranking was between bad and awful, which like I do feel bad about that. Like it really sucks, but I can see everything they're saying. And then the last response that I had said, personally, I'd rank her in mid-tier, like just okay, because her helmet reminds me more of the Roman/Greek mythology. Same goes for the white sleeves. These braids are not what I'd do on her, but I think it could be worse. I'd prefer long free hair with tiny braids in it. It's kind of hard to explain. I think the corset is okay, but I'd rather have more traditional elements like more poofy sleeves, not over the top. So they ranked her as just okay, which means that her final ranking is bad. So she's unquestionably the worst ranked Barbie in today's video, which is kind of rough because that's what we're ending on, but that's just how it ended up happening. My camera really said, I'm going to save you from embarrassment, because I started getting a little teary-eyed trying to film the outro and the battery died. But yes, that is everything for today. I really hope you guys can experience, like, watching this, at least a tenth of the enjoyment that I had cultivating all of the information for this video. Like, again, I know I've said this a lot. I'm sorry for repeating myself. This has been such a labor of love and something that I felt so passionate about. And it's just so cool to get to learn more and get to hear all of these responses and to be able to find a way to rank and talk about one of my favorite doll lines while being respectful, or at least I hope that it came across as respectful. Everyone who replied seemed pretty into it. And like, that was obviously the intention going in, was that I wanted to be respectful of these cultures. And I like wanted to hear from people who are actually connected to them rather than trying to just like do research and decide myself. Like, that's really what the aim was. So hopefully it comes across. Hopefully this is like a good way to do this sort of ranking, but I'm just so happy that I finally get to say that I've made this video. I obviously need to give like the biggest thank you humanly possible to everyone who responded over the course of these couple of months while I've been trying to gather these responses and these rankings. Like, I've said this in a few videos where you guys give responses, but I quite literally could not have even come close to doing this video without you guys. And also the fact that we managed to do almost every single one of these Barbies, like we only had 2 that I couldn't find someone to answer for, is so astronomical to me, so big to me. And I'm just so, it's happening again. My camera battery is not going to die a second time to save me. I'm just so emotional and so grateful that you all consented to participate in this project and responded to me. And yeah, I just want to give like the biggest thanks possible to everyone who was a part of this. But that's it. That's the ranking. That's the video for today. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, I really do hope that that you enjoyed it at least somewhat as much as I did. I know I'm maybe a little bit more into this than most people because I just feel weirdly into this line, but I hope you guys did have fun with this as well. Please do feel free to let me know in the comments down below how you would rank these dolls if you're from any of these cultures. I am never going to say no to hearing more opinions, but that's going to be it for me for today, you guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day or your night or whatever it might be, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye, guys.